Alrighty, it's 12:02. We can go ahead and get started. Welcome in, everyone. My name is Joanne. I'm the Program Director for Graduate Professional Success for STEM PhDs and postdocs at the University of California, Irvine. If you haven't joined us before, welcome to a Life Beyond PhD series. Before we get started, I will do a little bit of announcements to let folks sort of trickle in, and then I'll pass it to our main show. So just as reminders for our last events coming up for the end of the year, we have two more Life Beyond PhD sessions next week, one in person, featuring for those who are interested in business development and taking their technology from the bench to real life and application. We have that one next week on December 12th. And then we also have medical writing and consulting for those who want to utilize their labs in a different way, more for science communication. And we have that on Thursday again online. Onto our main show. And again, if you have not joined us for GPS STEM before, we really focus in and celebrate the end of one journeys. And this particular seminar series showcases various STEM workforce careers. This is a fireside style chat, and it's really intended to be informal, casual, and allow for folks to be able to explore various careers, identify critical skills in order to be successful, and to be able to connect with folks who are in that industry. So today we are joined by our speaker, Dr. Mary Berkey. Dr. Mary Berkey completed her PhD at the University of Chicago. She studied nuclear physics. She then transitioned into a Mirzayan Fellowship, where she spent about 12 weeks at the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine in Washington, D.C., where she learned about science and technology policy, as well as the role of scientists and where scientists and engineers play in advising the nation. After her fellowship, Dr. Berkey completed her postdoc at the Lawrence Livermore National Lab, studying simulations of how to deflect or disrupt incoming asteroids via nuclear mitigation missions, and later transitioning into her staff scientist role. So today, this talk, Dr. Berkey's will share about her experience at a national lab as a staff scientist, sort of differences in the research that would be in comparison to academia, if not very similar, and how to pursue a very similar path. So with that, I'm going to drop into the chat her LinkedIn, and then I will hand it off to Dr. Berkey. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. And I would also like to say that this is a very fantastic program that you have. Chicago had something smaller that was similar, but I do wish, like, as I see all the different career people that you were bringing in to speak, it's very useful to know what is out there that you can do with your advanced degree in science and technology, because there is a whole lot more out there besides academia. As my PI once told me, if he's successful in his career, he'll graduate maybe about 12 to 15 PhD students. And when he retires, he will leave one job opening, which is that's the math. But this is also the information economy now. So all of the skills that you're developing are exceptionally useful and like very valuable, and you can make make a great life for yourself doing pretty much like anything across the spectrum, and still be doing science and coding. So about, I guess, my specific journey. So as was mentioned, I work at Lawrence Livermore National Lab, which is, I guess, in Northern California. It's a bit outside of the Bay. It's in a nice area where there's lots of vineyards, which is quite lovely. But I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with the National Lab System. I believe there are about 17 of them, and they all reside under the Department of Energy, which is part of the executive branch of the United States government. So full disclosure, if there is a government shutdown, there will be some delay if we have some rollover funding. But if a government shutdown lasts more than a few weeks, we will be told to stay at home for a while until that's fixed. So fair warning, we are affected by the government's doings in Washington, D.C. And then the lab that I specifically work at, Lawrence Livermore, it is in kind of a special group of national labs. There are 3 of them that work under the National Nuclear Security Administration, which is a pretty big entity within the Department of Energy, but they specialize mostly in like national security applications. and with a bit of an emphasis on the stockpile, which is what our nuclear deterrent is based on. And so we have a lot of allies who rely on us for this nuclear deterrent. And part of that deal is ensuring that we have the people and the resources being, I guess, administered to that aging stockpile, which hasn't been tested since the 90s, and to ensure that, like, yes, if we needed to defend us and our allies, it would work. So Lawrence Livermore National Lab does lots of interesting science and many things beyond that as well. And the other two national security labs are Los Alamos National Lab and Sandia, and they do lots of interesting science as well. But that is one of their kind of key things is the directors of all three of those national labs have to collectively sign a letter and send it to the president every year, saying, yes, our stockpile will work and is reliable. So that's kind of the baseline, I guess, of background of my lab. You may have also seen in the news the National Ignition Facility, which is on our site, made a whole bunch of press a few months ago when they achieved ignition. So they managed to shine a whole bunch of lasers on this tiny little device that they had engineered, spent many, many, many years and man hours engineering, and they managed to get more energy out of it than they had put in with all of the lasers, which is the official definition of achieving fusion ignition. So everyone's very excited about that. And we got lots of very nice press for that. But let's see here. So in terms of my specific experience at the lab, so I started as a postdoc, and they only let you do 3 years of postdoc. It's kind of a hard cutoff sometimes if you're at a different national labs, like Lawrence Berkeley, for instance. They can let you go as long as 5 years, so you can do essentially a whole nother PhD as your postdoc. But with Lawrence Livermore, they only let you do 3, and after that, you can either leave the lab and go somewhere else, and they do encourage you to publish things during your postdoc, so that if you wanted to do that, you could. But they also would very much like it if you stayed and continued working there. I believe that, especially in my division, which I joined to do planetary defense, it is, I guess, the division that deals most with like the national kind of security applications that are the centerpiece to the lab's mission, and they are actively hiring, and they have been actively hiring, as you may have noticed. The world is a bit tense these days. There's seems to be a whole lot more war than peace, and that in turn affects us as well. So yeah, there's a lot of tensions ratcheting up, and so they are always looking for more people to bring on. But so, and when you start there as a postdoc, it's pretty clearly conveyed that they would kind of like you to stay. They sign you up to get a clearance, and then they kind of show you, try to give you a lay of the land. These are all the different projects that you can work on, and they give you some spare time to try and explore all of those different projects besides the one that you're specifically assigned to, which is great. There are things appearing in the chat. Should I address them now or address them later?
That's up to you. If you have a flow you like to get into, I'm also collecting them on the back end, so don't feel like you have to chase them.
Okay. I will finish my thought process and then I will address them, but I think I'm almost at the end of my spiel, but let's see here. So where was I going with that? But yeah, they give you some extra time so that you can explore all of the different projects. But once you kind of do transition into becoming staff, then you may be working on like 3 or 4 different main projects, and you'll be charging your time to each of them specifically. And it'll be maybe, I've never worked in industry, but I imagine it'd be kind of similar to how industry might work. Like you still are kind of using your technical degree to solve scientific problems, but on the flip side, you have managers who are kind of telling you, I think your skills will be suited for these specific projects, and can you work on these? And there's deadlines and deliverables, because we have a lot of customers, I guess, in the security entities of the United States government. So it's kind of a hybrid, a bit of an academic institution and a company, at least in my limited experience. Um, I think that's, I guess, all I have off the cuff, and I can go through some of the questions, and I can say more things later if people are interested, because I'm also interested, as was mentioned at the beginning, I'm interested in policy. And one of the things that I really like about Livermore is that they have kind of a foot in the policy world. They send a lot of people to Washington, D.C. to like sit in on like various like executive entities, and even like in the White House and whatnot. And so there's a possibility to be involved with that and just move over to DC and like be representing the lab with some authority. And then they also have kind of like a little on-site think tank that that was stood up by one of Barack Obama's, I think, nuclear advisors. So which is also very well respected in DC. When I was there, everyone was like, "You should go and join them when you when you get over to Livermore." Let's see. So. All right. Are scientist or postdoc jobs in the national labs open to international scholars? Yes, they are. So I've worked at multiple national labs, and I would say that the security national labs are not as friendly of a place to work if you're an international scholar, but I do have international friends who work at Lawrence Livermore. It's just it can be a little bit hard to move around the lab like physically, because some places are fenced off and you can't get in. So you just might have to go a little bit longer around the way to get to the cafeteria. But they will take you. Let's see. But for like Argonne National Lab or like Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, their population of international scholars is much higher, and I don't believe they have any particular discrimination, or like there's nothing that would be dinged against you if you were to apply and you're an international person. It is not a requirement to start as a postdoc before they transition to staff. They bring a lot of people on as staff, depending on what your background is. I think they're being a little bit more like, if you've already done a postdoc somewhere and you have skills that are kind of applicable to what they would like to use, they'll bring you on as staff. But usually, like when you're looking at it, you can talk to someone and they will kind of tell you, "We think this would be a good fit. We want to bring you on right as staff," or like, "Oh, maybe if you're early career, a postdoc might be nice." And then you have this extra time to figure out what you want to do, and we can train you a bit. Let's see here. How often do LLNL offer staff scientist positions to their postdocs? It depends a little bit on where you would like to be a staff member. If you want to be a staff member and you have the skills to be one in like the nuclear security kind of enterprise, then if you're already starting from a postdoc in a lab and they've already paid for your clearance, then they will certainly be happy to continue getting the return on their investment in you and give you a staff position. If you want to continue doing working for a national or Livermore in like more of a scientific area, like the Physical and Life Sciences Directorate, or like doing science on NIF, for example, there would have to be an open position for you to apply to, I believe. Let's see here. The interview process and how long might it take to hear back after submitting an application? Let's see here. So Livermore is a government entity, and they have a very opaque job listing site that everyone must go through, whether you're even at the lab already or not. So I'm trying to remember. I think my applications included a couple of reference letters and my CV, and I think a cover letter as well. I might have just opted not to do the cover letter, but I did have to submit like all of the required materials, and I applied through that website, even though I already worked there. And then once, I'm not sure, I think they're trying to have the entire process like from beginning to where you apply, if they express interest, to if you've then like interviewing you, like you'll give kind of like maybe an hour-long talk, and then they'll do like a whole day of just like different people asking you questions. And then it'll take like, I think the whole process, I think they wanted to have it done in under like 4 months, but I would have to check. There, it's one of those things where I guess everyone's very busy, but we also want to bring in people. And they have this weird setup where they need a lot of people to interview you, which kind of takes a while to collect all of that. But they are trying to make it, they are actively trying to make it quicker, but I think it would be on the scale of months still. Let's see here. What is the work culture like at a national lab? Is work-life balance respected? The short answer is yes. You do have, so I guess I've been a staff member for a little over a year now, and I had 1 year of kind of like buffer or like a probationary period, and then now I've been brought on as like a permanent. On the flip side, as I've mentioned before, there are incentives to kind of give your all, and at the same time, it is tense out there, and more is being asked of my national lab than has ever been asked before. So I would say it's kind of a skill that you may have to develop to set boundaries, especially kind of starting out. You'll probably fall prey to the same thing that I felt, like you're a like strong, motivated person who like wants to like prove themselves, and that takes a lot of work, and it'll be very intense like the first few years. And if you throw all of yourself into it, then your work-life balance will probably suffer a bit. But if you set the boundaries, and that will take a bit of effort, and you may have to say no to things. That's okay to do. They do respect. It's a bit of a tension, because like there's so much being asked of you, but at the same time, every time they lose someone to like industry, that's like years of training that they put into that person. And that's a significant loss. So if you're burnt out, you're not helping anybody. But so I would say yes is a short answer, but also make boundaries and have others respect them as well. Let's see here. I've heard contrasting information, getting your foot in the door in one of the national labs helps with applying to other national lab staff positions. But if you're not sure about a prolonged career in a national lab, it's better to apply to industry than applying to the national lab at a later stage in your career. What are your thoughts? Let's see. Well, I guess it kind of depends on what your final goal is, I would say. I haven't ever had an industry job, but I know there are lots available that kind of do similar things. And I also have never had an industry job, so I've never had an industry paycheck before. But I do subscribe to the vague inclination that sometimes it tends to be more than what the government pays. So if you find like a very well-paying industry job that like has similar skills, then like that could be a nice, like you could get some of the return on the investment that you put into getting this advanced degree a little bit more quickly, and maybe elevate yourself to where you can buy a house or something like that. So like that, those are kind of things to consider if you're just purely looking at it from a career standpoint, and like money's not factoring into it. I would say that now is probably not a bad time to enter the national labs, especially if you want to advance quickly in your career, because everyone is new and everyone is young, and they're having a lot of people retire right now as well. So if the need is so great, that you would advance, like kind of, you would be asked to do things probably well above and beyond what you would be asked to do in industry much faster. So it's kind of what you're interested in or what your goals are. Let's see here. What is the professional growth trajectory like in terms of your leadership development, grant proposal writing, and other responsibilities as you transition from postdoc to early career? That is a good question, and it's also a very easy answer, at least for my area of the National Lab. I have never had to write a grant. I have never had to ask for money. And the reason for that is there's already that the government comes to us and asks for things. So the money is there. It's just, and then you are assigned to different projects with the money. So you don't ever have to write that grant. but if you need that experience to get a job elsewhere, then you will never have had to write a grant, at least in my specific corner of the lab. I believe like the other more science-based, like physical and life sciences, NIF, they do have to write like scientific grants to get money. And there is like an internal money pot that people can apply to in the lab, called like it's called an LDRD, but I don't remember what the acronym stands for. Let's see here. Let's see here. What is job stability like at a national lab? That, I guess, let me, the nice answer is it's right now it looks really good because there's a lot of things that the government or that the world kind of needs from the national security labs right now. So on the flip side, we are also kind of dependent on what happens in Washington, and Washington is not very predictable these days. In fact, the only thing that's predictable is their unpredictability. I feel like it's kind of the so I guess pretty stable. But that's it's a bit nuanced. And then how is it different from a postdoc at a university? I would say that they try to make the postdoc experience kind of similar to that at a university. You'll have like a few people that you'll be working with and they'll mentor you and you'll be learning new skills and they'll be encouraging you to publish and produce results. And you also have, I think, like 25% of your time to also develop to devote to career development, which could mean a variety of different things. But I guess like the kind of the difference is that they're trying to push you a little bit towards becoming staff, or it's also like half of a kind of a training program to be staff later, if you're okay with that. They like to take on people who are at least considering maybe transitioning to staff at the end of their postdoc. Let's see here. What were the qualities that I had that made me a successful candidate? So it's kind of a bunch of different things. They were, when I first applied, they were actually more interested in my undergraduate career than they were my PhD, and that was partially because when I did my undergrad, I managed to kind of squash 3 technical degrees into 4 years, and so I kind of had a variety of different things that I had learned how to do during that time. And I also kind of had come to, even though I just like done a very specific and technical PhD, I had gone to grad school and like attempted to like sit in on a variety of other different courses to kind of learn different things like business and policy and whatnot. So I kind of came to the table and said, you know, I don't like to specialize. I like to know how to do lots of different things. And they're like, that's great, because we have lots of different projects and you're going to have to know how to do lots of different things and you're going to have to spin up quickly on all of them. So that was one thing that they particularly liked. The other is they do, because you're working on lots of different projects, you're also working on with teams of people pretty frequently. So they do ask you a lot of questions about, how do you interact with people? How do you work with people? Like, what's the dynamic? Like, what kind of role do you play in a team? And I had been doing, I guess, like student government activities since undergrad and all the way through grad school, and like leading committees and whatnot. So I could bring that kind of like people experience to the table as well. So, and then the third thing, especially if you're in the national security kind of corner, is they do look for people who kind of understand that, like, this is like we're supporting this mission, right? You're you're kind of performing like a service for the U.S. government. You're doing your part to like keep like the United States and the allies safe, and so they also look for people who like understand and care about that mission. So those are kind of, I guess, the three things. So, and they also want you to be really nice technically too, but but I think at least for postdocs and staff positions, they're all hiring PhDs, right? So I mean, they don't just give away PhDs in a technical field for free. So, let's see here. What were the contributing factors in deciding if you wanted to pursue the postdoc and to continue as staff later? Let's see here. I think so. I don't know how much of it's like, how much of it is personal and how much of it is like there was specific things that I wanted. I'm the kind of person that like craves security and I guess continuity, and like I knew all the people, I knew the projects, and so, and at the same time too, I guess like as I was transitioning, we were kind of just coming out of the pandemic, and it didn't seem nice to like go out and try and find something that could be like way more tumultuous as well. And I do care about the mission, and I did see that there was more to be gained from continuing as staff. That being said, I at least what my career is not yet complete just because I have a staff position. I do eventually want to return to Washington, D.C. So I'm trying, they gave advice to me there to not allow myself to be pigeonholed, which is what I have very much been the past few years. And so I'm trying to like kind of work within the staff position to like try and exploit opportunities to interact with like policy people and to learn and to keep learning about policy so that eventually I can go back and be in a little bit more of a stronger position than I would have otherwise have been if I had just stayed in DC and worked up from the bottom there, if that makes sense. So, let's see here. In your role as related to policy, how much of that was self-taught and how much continues to be self-taught? It kind of depends. So Livermore does a very good job there to continue about their science policy program. They have their policy program is called the Center for Global Security Research, and it's filled with people who do policy, and they bring in people who do policy, and they have a whole like very extensive seminar series. So like maybe 2 to 3 times a week, if you wanted to go to one of their seminars, you could. And you would learn about all sorts of different things related to policy, but mainly with a focus on nuclear policy. I don't remember where exactly I saw this. It might have been at my grad school career place, but if you are interested in policy, I was informed somewhere that if you wanted to apply for a position at the State Department, they recommend getting a subscription to The Economist and The Washington Post for a year and keeping up with that. and which I've done for a while, and it does give you a very thorough and detailed kind of understanding of like everything that's happening in the world, like from The Economist, and then in the United States specifically from the Washington Post, and you'll kind of that will you'd be surprised how well you can keep up to speed using those. On the other hand, when I was in Washington, D.C., you can go to like any think tank or like they have so many different kind of like institutes trying to disseminate information that you could spend an entire day just like going to different events and learning about different things. And then you are actually on the forefront of like, this is what we anticipate happening next in the United States and the world. And these are the things we are looking forward, the problems we see on the horizon. So I've only managed to get in DC. But if you can keep kind of maybe like one or two paces behind that using like the kind of like high quality news that you have to pay for, it does make a difference as well. Let's see here. Yes. We did an interview with Livermore and they asked about ethics, which I hadn't considered, but in hindsight is very important. So I would have to know like what the specifics about the ethics question was, but the bottom line of that is we are funded in most part by taxpayers' dollars. So we are beholden to the taxpayer on the things that we deliver. And so the last thing that the lab wants is for someone or for some journalists to do some digging and find out that we like misused a ton of taxpayers' dollars. Like that would be very bad. And that would be a great betrayal of trust to the American public. And so they are very committed to ethics. They want to keep faith with the American people. Let's see here. Let's see here. What do you wish you knew sooner, personal or professional? Let's see. That's a tricky one. I guess I wish that I had kind of learned more about what is it. I wish I had more of these programs available to me when I was in grad school, so I wouldn't be so scared of the outside world, and I could maybe look a little bit more confidently outside. Because like I very much value the work that I'm doing at Livermore, but at the same time too, I also would kind of like to not be pigeonholed quite so much as I am, and it would feel better to know what options were out there, and though you can have a very awesome career at Lawrence Livermore National Lab because they let you move all over the lab if you want to like change positions or change directorates or do something different, you're allowed to do that. You can have a full career of lots of different things at the lab. If you stay in the national security type stuff, you will not be publishing in journals that other people can read. You will not be seen as a scientist by the peers outside of your lab or the national security enterprise. And so the longer you stay, if it becomes harder to leave. So that's kind of, I guess, I try to keep that wisdom in the back of my head at all times. But if I did want to jump out to do something else not directly connected to the lab, the longer I stay, the harder it will be. Unless I am actively trying to release stuff so that people see me outside of the lab. Do I have information on funding sources and research opportunities in national labs for biomedical research? I'm not a biomedical person. I know Lawrence Livermore does have people that do that type of stuff. But funding sources and research opportunities are a little bit more details than I have beyond just that they exist. Sorry. Do I do interviews with new people? And if so, how do I gauge a person's fit, or how does your team approach that? So let's see here, it's been a while since I've interviewed a person, but they have like kind of a nice long list of like different things that they kind of want to address, and they try to like they give you like 2 people for an hour, and then 2 people for another hour, and then 2 people for another hour, for like a whole like half of a morning and an afternoon. So by the end of it, you're very exhausted. But at least both of the 2 people for each hour are told, we would kind of like you to feel out like this specific aspect of what this person might be like. And at least when I was interviewed, and I think the last time I interviewed someone, a lot of it centered around people interactions. Like how did you handle this tension between you and someone above you when you're trying to get this result out? How did you like when this new person came in, where you would like, how did you handle mentoring them? Things like that. But on the other hand, I had already been there too when I was interviewed, so it wasn't quite a fair thing to be interviewed by people you already know. Let's see here. Well, the interview lasts a whole day for the people that would suggest interviews early, and they're ongoing. There's no like season for interviews. They're all rolling. There's no like deadlines as far as like unless it's for like a very, very specific job posting, which says like we need someone to do this very specific thing. Which at least in my division, they usually try to have like a very broad, they're just like looking for good people. Those kinds of job postings, they could just stay open, I think, unless they max out on the amount of people that they want to hire, which I don't think they're going to do for a while. But you never. But things are only as predictable as the U.S. government. So let's see here. What do I do, and what does my day-to-day look like, and how much of it is experimenting in lab work versus meetings? So Livermore is they're very much a simulation lab. They have a lot of big computers, and they would say that their strength is being able to run very detailed and sophisticated simulations to answer questions. So I am part of that enterprise. So most of what I do in terms of science is running simulations and then pulling data from the simulations and analyzing it and then running more simulations. In terms of, I guess, work versus meetings, I would say the more important you become, the more meetings you have, and the more projects you have, the more meetings you have. I definitely don't envy the people who, I mean, I don't know how you would possibly be productive if you had 6 different projects, but it's not unheard of. And if each project has 1 meeting per week and then meets like with a bigger team, but for a broader project every other week, then that's like 1.5 meetings per week. And then you have 6 of those, and then individual meetings with different people. And it adds up. So I guess it depends. You can, they are trying to have less meetings, but yeah, you can always, I guess you as an individual always have the decision to not hold a meeting and just have it be an email, at least when you're organizing stuff. Or if you don't have anything to talk about with the people that you're going to meet with, you always have the option to cancel. So Um, is there any more questions?
As we're coming up towards like more like 15 minutes left, my last question to you, and if anyone else has any more, feel free to stick around. What's your general advice for PhDs and postdocs who are looking to pursue a similar role in their industry?
Let's see here. Or um, my advice. Be okay with trying new things. I would say I so I it's kind of funny for like the bio that you put in here. I haven't talked any at all about planetary defense, but when I was looking for a position for a postdoc position at Livermore, I just applied for like the open postdoc. Like we're just kind of looking for postdocs, and I just knew that I cared about national security and I wanted to do something that had a little bit more application instead of like a very specific like technical thing within like some physics theory that I did for my grad school. I wanted to do something where I like did something and it felt like lots of people or like people would be affected. Um, and so I applied to this postdoc position that had no description, effectively, and like no specific description, and they said, well, we think you would be a great fit for the planetary defense group. How does it sound? And I said, sign me up. so, so here I am. I didn't ask to join the planetary defense group, but that was where they thought I would be a good fit. And it was doing science that I had never done before. Even though I did nuclear physics, I didn't actually do a lot of nuclear physics for the planetary defense project that I was working on. So just be open and interested in trying new things. You never know.
I love that. Apply to job descriptions with zero description in it. That's amazing. And what a tagline to be able to say, I saved the planet.
Well, I mean, the planet has to be in peril first, and in general, I would prefer for the planet not to be in peril to begin with. But it has certainly been a fun field to be part of, I would say.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. And thank you, Mary, for joining us and sharing about yourself. Everyone, please drop in a thank you, some claps in the chat. We'll be staying behind for maybe another 5 to 10 minutes, depending on folks. And if not, happy holidays and see you guys at the next event. Thank you so much.